All right, everybody. Hey, listen, we've got our man Matt's here today, and I got to tell you, so we're always talking. We're always talking about how you grow your business. We're always talking about certain things you need to be doing as a leader, and I'm really excited to be talking with Matt today because he's got an awesome company called Grateful, and it hit home with me when I looked at like what he's doing, because it's all about the social good, right? It's all about what are we doing to give back to the community? How are we giving our employees and those that we're leading a bigger vision of why we do what we do? Why do you put in the hours? Why do you sacrifice your time away from your family and all of the loved ones that you have in order to do something even greater? And I'm excited to be diving deep into this today with Matt. And then of course I find out the guy's from Iowa. I've got Iowa ties. I love that. And he's also, his former career was in architecture. And for those of you that know, back in the day after I got done playing ball, I wanted to be an architect. And I didn't want to go to school for 10 years. And the man did it himself. So I'm really excited to be talking about it. Looks like we got a lot in common here. Matt, thank you. And welcome to the show, brother.
Josh, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, first of all, so how's the weather in Iowa? I know our season is changing and we're kind of getting into that. Okay, it's fall. It's going to happen. Winter's approaching us faster than we think.
You know, the weather here always has a hard time making up its mind, but right now it is a little bit of hot and humid, but a little bit of teasing of fall, which is great. Fall is one of the best times of the year, right? Just with the leaves changing, a little bit crisper, cool air, get away from the humidity and heat a little bit, but don't get buried in snow yet. It's a perfect time.
Yeah, I loved my time in Iowa. I tell you what, my first year down in Centerville, I will admit, just because it was so different, I wanted to get away. I wanted to get out of the state of Iowa as fast as I could. But I stuck it out that first year. And to be honest with you, I fell in love with Centerville and Des Moines and Waterloo and all of those great little communities around the state of Iowa. And you guys got a great state. Tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, share us the progression from how you became an architect and then, of course, got from there into technology. And of course, now what you're doing with your company, Grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking. I've always loved creating things, like imagining things and creating things. That's what I've been doing ever since I was a kid. And that's what led me into architecture first. I thought my career was going to be designing buildings. I went to school for that. Like you mentioned, it doesn't take 10 years, but it does take quite a few years, by the way. Not as bad as med school, but worse than a lot of others. With a lot of stuff to cram into your head in those years as well. But I love that because of the creation aspect. But when I was working as an architect after school, I actually came up with an idea for a software tool for architects and contractors to use on their construction projects, managing some of the documentation that goes back and forth. Not a super exciting area, but it was a problem that I ran into while I was working as a young architect. Came up with a software solution for it, told my wife I was going to go work on building that little software tool and sell it as a business and go back to being an architect within 3 years, I think was what I told her. And that was like 18 years ago now. Found that I love technology, building and creating technology just as much as I love actually designing buildings. Still love architecture as well. But the software piece, I mean, there's just so many opportunities in the world we live in. Technology is amazing. It's got pros and cons, right? But there's so many great things you can do with it.
Without a doubt.
It's been a little bit interesting though. So I've spent, like, I kind of feel like I've had one foot each in two different career tracks. One, working as an architect, and two, working as a technologist and a startup leader in particular. And it's actually been really interesting to get to observe some of the differences between those two completely different industries, right? And one of the things that happens in architecture is there is a lot of focus on public good. Sometimes they talk about it, sometimes it's more beneath the surface, but there's kind of this continuous stream of, you know, when you're working in architecture and you're designing buildings that people use, like you're always aware of how you're impacting the users of those buildings, the communities around you. Like there's just a strong continuous theme of public good in that particular profession, which is really cool. And in the technology space, it's interesting. There's so many awesome things happening with great startups and cool tech products out there, but that theme of social impact is actually missing in a lot of ways in the technology space. And Grateful is my fourth startup. My other startups have been more focused on the traditional build cool software, make money for myself and investors and our team, types of things that all startups pursue. But it's kind of bothered me that lack of focus on public good and social good in the technology space, that's what's really led me down the path of wanting to start Grateful 3 years ago. And not to be too critical of it, but just one quick example I'd like to share. There's a really big conference that happens. There's a lot of conferences, but one in particular in San Francisco every year for SaaS or software as a service startups, very focused on it. Great conference, ton of events, tons of learning. 3 years ago, I was looking at it, like 200 sessions in it. They had 2 sessions on ethics, and 198 other sessions on how to raise money and how to sell and how to grow your startup and all those other things that are so critically important. And for the 2 sessions on ethics out of a couple hundred, the one session, the top line on it basically was, don't go to jail. Like, that's what it means to be ethical in the technology space. And it was like, really? Like, that's the bar we measure ourselves against as technologists and software startups. Like, just don't go to jail, don't hurt other people, or if you do, just don't get caught. And it was a little bit disappointing to me. I just think that's what, I'm being long-winded, but that's what led me into this space about how can we use technology for social good and public good overall, if that makes sense.
Well, one of the things I'm really impressed with where you're able to do this and your diversity is because, I know a lot of architects, I know a lot of tech guys, and they typically have this engineer mindset, right? So it's black and white. There's no gray, and there's definitely no emotions, and there's no, don't talk about feelings because those don't even exist either, right? And so this idea of social consciousness and what you're looking for in the good of the community, that's not a typical thing. And I think that was a great example of going to this conference in San Francisco. 2 classes out of over 200 are talking about ethics and once again, stay out of jail. Well, how much do you push that, right? And I'm in an industry, I've got multiple industries that I get to be a part of, either through partnerships or as a sole proprietor. And I see the same issue. And sometimes it's like, why are we not more focused on these things? Because it is a lot of times about the bottom dollar and creating millions and going viral, all of these things. When did the connection come for you where you're like, okay, I made my money, or I know how to make money, but I don't feel like I'm actually doing what I'm called to do?
It was several years ago while I was working on my 3rd startup, actually. So I started a construction software company, started a consulting firm, and started a company in the marketing tech space. My first 2 companies have been very successful. That 3rd one, unfortunately, was not as successful. We ended up having to shut it down. And it was a good opportunity for reflection. I've always thought about these things and been thinking about giving and generosity on a personal level, but it was like, you just work your butt off for startups for years. And is the sole measure of success with them how much money you make for your investors? Like, is that what you're judged on? That's very important. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about making great return for investors, but is like that really, again, is that the whole big picture of what we should care about with the technology that we're building and the businesses in the startup space? That forced me into reflecting more. And we build all these great tools. Speaking as a technologist, let's use them for public good even more. That was the driver that pushed me into wanting to explore that space. This is 3 or 4 years ago and got me started down the path of creating what is Grateful today.
Are you seeing that employees are looking for the same thing too? Because I paid attention to the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners, and those graduating from college, it seems like they're all about just causes and their communities and creating more of a life for themselves. Is that also another thing that you were able to identify and kind of get a little bit ahead of the curve on?
Yes. I mean, there's definitely generational shifts happening around this, right? Like there's more problems in our world than there ever have been, but there's also more people that care than there ever have been, and a greater focus on that, which is awesome. Some of that is generational, and it's not to say that past generations didn't care, but I think there's a difference in willingness to talk about it and take action on it publicly and mix it into other worlds. Like, hey, businesses should care too. And I should want to work for and buy from companies that are doing good in the world as well. Like, that's a new focus. Again, past generations have cared deeply also, but there's been more of a mentality of, it's private, it's personal, giving is personal, and we don't need to talk about that. And business and social good are 2 completely separate things. And that's just not the case in today's world anymore. Yeah.
Well, let's dive deep into this. So Grateful, give us what it does. How does it help companies? What's obviously we know the passion behind it, but if we could go a little bit more granular on that, I'd love for the audience to see what this looks like in action.
Yeah, thank you. So what Grateful does today is we provide a platform for socially good businesses to give to their customers and their employees' favorite charities. And so we work with companies that use it for workplace giving, where they set it up and the company provides dollars in Grateful. Their employees get to pick what charities those dollars actually go to.
Mhm.
So it's democratizing it versus traditional model of a company CEO or some leadership or a committee picks a handful of charities for a company to support. That works totally fine. But if you really want to engage your workforce, everybody's passionate about different causes, and giving each of your employees the ability to pick one or more things that they care about to have the company help support is extremely powerful. And there are a lot of good conversations happening right now, just in business environment, about workplace giving, right? Corporate social responsibility and workplace giving and other buzzwords related to that are hot topics. The other space that we operate in is in customer and client giving. And I think that's the next hot topic that is not at the top of mind yet, but is starting to build more momentum around it as well. So companies, socially good companies, can use Grateful to say, we're going to donate, let's say 1% of each of our customers' purchases, and let our customers pick their favorite charities to send those dollars to. And traditional cause marketing, if you've heard that phrase, has been around for several decades, right? Like the idea of businesses donating and giving to and supporting charities. That's awesome and great, but it usually is dependent on, again, the business picking one or a couple charities to support.
Yeah.
What Grateful allows them to do is to make it personal to each of their customers and clients and to support things they care about. And one of the cool things that we do in our technology, not to speak too much about the technology, but as we collect messages of appreciation or thank yous from recipients of this, both from the nonprofits that we help support all across the country, but also from the people that are choosing things to give to. And it's really amazing to see some of these heartfelt messages about people saying, hey, thank you. I did business with your company and you chose to support this particular this nonprofit that's supporting research for this rare disease that my father had or my brother had or somebody else in my family is afflicted by. Or you chose to support this local animal shelter that, I adopted from several years ago or I volunteered at. People have different things that they care about. And by basically making it personal to them and letting them pick what to give to, it's incredibly powerful. There are 160 million Americans each year that donate to charities. There are 60 million Americans that volunteer for nonprofits every year. And of the people that give, 91% say that they are more likely to do business with companies that are willing to support something they personally care about.
Yeah.
In addition, in the early research we've done on this, we see that when a company offers the customer giving and customers participate in it, those customers spend 17% more with the company as well. So again, I'm being a little bit long-winded, but it's win-win all around. And I'm deeply passionate about it, right? Businesses support great charities that can use the help. Customers and employees pick the things they care about, but businesses grow more as a result of that. It's basically a way to grow your own business while doing good in the world at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'm really glad you went deep into this. We have 4 pillars in our company, and one of them is to give back. Like that is just a staple in our company, and we recognize the need for that. A question I have for you is like such an organization such as ours, where we do give back to the community. We also found a need that we sometimes needed to assist and help agents in need or agents, clients in need, right? A death in the family, something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way that your company is built around that Grateful? Does it allow for that type of giving as well too, or is it just strictly through nonprofits?
Yeah, great question. What we see a couple different use cases with it, right? We work with some businesses where it's part of an overall strategy for giving, and they'll have multiple different facets of that. Like Grateful is one piece they use. They do other programs as well. That's awesome. We also work with some companies, oftentimes small businesses, where the business owner is saying, "Gosh, I have a big heart, I care, but I don't have time to do this stuff." Grateful is a great and easy way for a small business to deploy without having a lot of extra time on their end. And so it might be their main giving program. In terms of the actual giving that happens through our platform, we have chosen to focus on 501c3 nonprofits. And really the challenge you get into is there are certainly lots of other people, causes, things in need outside of just 501c3s, right? I mean, go on GoFundMe or any of the other similar sites and read through the stories on there as well. But it gets a lot harder to discern which ones to support and credibility around those. And there's other tools for doing that. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel on that. So we've really chosen just to focus on the 501c3 side. Now, there are almost 2 million 501c3 nonprofits in the US alone, millions more nonprofits, not 501c3s, but similar designations in other countries that touch every type of cause and every type of need. So it's incredibly diverse, but we've chosen to focus on that particular universe from a giving standpoint. So food pantries, animal shelters, veterans groups, environmental causes. I mean, again, thousands of other examples, but those types of organizations are really what Grateful focuses on.
So then as a company, let's just say as ours, and I'm glad you said that you also work with smaller companies too, because I think sometimes people think like, well, it's just big for big corporations, right? You work with the Amazons and the Intels and all of these big companies that are probably donating hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm donating maybe a couple $1,000s a year, whatever. So awesome that you have that diversity in your platform. When a company says, hey, Matt, I really like what you're doing. I feel like this might be a good position for us. Like help me walk me through the steps of they've identified you as the source. They love what you stand for. They love what you're doing on that platform. How do they get involved with you?
Great question. I mean, we connect with them for a conversation is the easiest answer. We find is there's a lot of companies that give, and there's a lot of business owners and business leaders with big hearts. This particular focus that we're doing, particularly on the customer giving side, is somewhat of a new concept, although you can also find examples out there of other companies already doing it. There's other ways to do it as well. But because of that, a lot of times there's a learning process they go through as well, which includes us showing them how the software works and giving them examples of how other companies are using it. And you can find a lot of that on our website, of course, in our social media as well. But usually we connect for a conversation. They send us an email, they fill out the form on the website, and then we connect with them and walk them through a demo and talk about what their goals would be and how they would actually utilize it. And part of it is, again, companies do it because it's the right thing to do, right? Because they believe in social good and they care. But there is a very powerful marketing element of it, and being able to talk that through with businesses in their particular industry and talk about how they can use that, not because they're doing it just so they look good, but that is an additional benefit that comes from doing it. Growing their business while also growing the impact they make. Those two things go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I 100% agree. I think that's awesome. So where do you think giving is going? Obviously, we're getting into a recession. All the indicators are showing that we've got challenges in our country. There's no doubt about it. But have you seen a generational shift in more giving? Are you seeing a little bit less giving? I know you threw out some big numbers of 160 million people give annually. Has that number increased? Has it decreased? Where are we at in that aspect of charitable giving?
Yeah, that's a great question. No one knows for sure, but it's been interesting to see the trends the past couple of years, right? Going into early 2020, COVID hits, people are scared, everything's shutting down.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all were scared about our families, our jobs, what was going to happen with the recession that was occurring then. Yeah. But in the nonprofit community, there was a lot of fear as well, right? Sure. One, depending on the type of nonprofit you're running, how do you serve people in a safe way and keep your operations going? Yeah. But also what's going to happen with giving and funding in general. And there was a lot of fear about how funding was going to fall off a cliff, and certainly many, many challenges, right? So many small local nonprofits that depend on in-person events for fundraising. Suddenly you couldn't do those. Where I'm headed with that is the actual giving levels increased over the course of the past couple of years, despite all the economic damage from the pandemic and all the challenges that we've had. Giving has continued to increase over that time. And there, of course, have been shifts in, the types of giving that occurs and the types of groups that are receiving funding. But in general, people are giving even more despite the challenges occurring the past couple of years. So I can't say with certainty where it's going to go the next couple of years, particularly with the economic uncertainty that we have today. Yeah. But I feel good about the trend of the past couple of years, and the fact that we as a country, as people, have stood up and continued to give very generously despite a very difficult time as well. Something else I'll tack on the end of that too. There's so much focus in our media today on issues that divide us, right? There's so much divisiveness and anger and conflict in the country as a whole. what's been really fascinating to me is that giving and generosity spans across that whole spectrum. Like, you're just as likely to be generous and giving, whether, no matter where you stand from a political spectrum or whatever your views are on the issues of the day, like giving and generosity, and particularly supporting generalized causes, things like helping people that are homeless or hungry or other groups, those types of things really resonate with almost all Americans.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see. I'm not saying that giving is going to like solve some of the other issues that we have as a country, but it is something that unites us and can span across a lot of the divisiveness that we face today. And that encourages me about what the future holds for that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, just going back to your discovery that there's more giving going on over the last couple of years, especially through a pandemic. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think people looked at it and said, listen, I've got a lot of uncertainty. I don't know where the economy is going to be going. I don't know what, we have no idea how bad this pandemic potentially could get. Why do you think generosity increased?
I think people care deeply. I mean, we're fortunate to live in a country and a place and a time where there's many people that care deeply.
Yeah.
Not everyone does, but most do. Yeah. And willingness to give to and support and help others. I mean, it's just an incredibly powerful thing. As I mentioned, the statistics on people that do that, the percent of the population that does that, people care. And I think, when you are fearful or suffer or have your own challenges, obviously you become focused on how to solve those. But I think it also makes you more aware of what's happening with others that are around you and the needs are around you, and groups and people that might have it even worse that you can help to support as well. And, we live in a world, as you very well know, with 24/7 media and access to everything through social media. Lots of pros and cons that come with that, but certainly one pro is just awareness of challenges in our society and the fact that we can help contribute to those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were saying that, I couldn't help but think of the same thing in the sense of, first of all, you had there was no greater time to have more eyeballs on social media, right? People were actually, they had no choice, but that's what they were doing. That, time slowed down. The distractions of life were not happening, right? So people were able to be focused more on the things that were more important to them, right? Family, friends. They started to look. I think people started to really look inward over the last couple of years. First of all, to see how fragile life is, to see how everything can be taken away, but there were certain things you could never lose if you choose to. And then also, once again, as you said, to see how fortunate they really believed they were, right? And how I also understood that there were so many people out there that were suffering, that were in true despair. And that was, people I think innately are good, right? I think people innately are generous if they're able to slow down, take in the moment, realize what's going on around them, and they're always looking to see what they can do to betterment the people around them and the community and their society. So I think it's a great observation of what you were making there. So how do people find you? How do people connect with you? How do they get a hold of you so that they can start to implement your technology into their business?
Thank you. And I completely agree with everything you just said. That was a good way to say it, particularly around the fragility of life. But there's some things that can't get taken away as well. Completely 110% agree with you on that. To find Grateful, go to our website. It's begrateful.org. The organization is Grateful or Grateful app or Grateful Giving. We talk about that a lot, but the best way to find us is to go to our website at begrateful.org. We chose that website. It's an expression of, encouraging people to be grateful and to think gratefully as well. A little bit of play on words there. Grateful is a certified B Corporation and legally set up as a B Corporation and, a type of company that is concerned about social impact as well. So we thought it'd be fun to have the domain name after that. But begrateful.org is a great way to connect with us.
Love it. Awesome, man. As we're closing today, once again, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners are listening to this, and they're very much aligned with the values that we spoke about today. They love to give back. They love their communities. What would you say to them right now if they're just maybe they don't feel like they can give, or at least the amount that they feel like they should be giving? Like, what would you say to them to just encourage them that that's such an important thing for them to be doing, and especially obviously as a precedence to show their employees as well?
Yeah, I would say a couple things on that. One is most entrepreneurs, like we start things because we want to make a difference, right? And most entrepreneurs have big hearts as well. So usually this is something that resonates from a value standpoint, but you just hit a nail on the head there, right? It's a time issue, it's a money and resources issue. Like, are you able to do things? I think the actual act of giving is more important than the dollar amounts that you're giving with it as well. One of the other things that we launched this year with Grateful is a website directory called Socially Good Companies, where we're sharing information about businesses that engage in social good and engage in giving in general, customer giving, employee giving. But we reach out to businesses, whether they're using Grateful or not, and ask them to update information about their activities. Because I get asked all the time by people saying, hey, Matt, how do I find more businesses that believe in this so I can shop from them, do business with them, consider employment opportunities with them. Yeah. Socially Good Companies is a way for us to approach that. But I also get asked by entrepreneurs and business owners saying, gosh, I want to do this, but I can't afford to give millions of dollars or even tens of thousands of dollars. I'm working on building my business. Yeah. And what I always tell folks is I don't think the dollar amount matters. What matters is the act of doing it, like getting in that pattern of doing it. There's actually a myth that happens with entrepreneurs, right? Which is, hey, go build your business and make a gazillion dollars from it. And then someday once you're wealthy, you can be the Bill Gates and donate all your money and do those things, right? Those actions are good. By the way, Bill Gates has made a great impact. All those things are good. But also, you don't have to wait till you're wealthy. You don't have to wait till your business is built. It's much better to bake it into the DNA of what you're doing it and doing it from day one. And again, the dollar amounts doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's $10 or $100. It's that action that actually counts. And that's why people should start today. Not to be too much a proponent of it, but that's what I believe in.
No, I think it's great, buddy. And we didn't even get into the spiritual aspect of it, but I really appreciate how you kept it in this aspect of it. So, Matt, thanks so much, man. This was awesome. I love what you're doing. I'm a big fan, and I'm just so glad that you followed your heart and you went out and did this. And it's obviously making a great impact for not only companies but all the nonprofits that you're able to support through it.
Josh, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. All right, you guys. Hey, listen, awesome podcast here with my man, Matt. And we all know you guys are generous because not only have you given of your time by creating your business and your company and the employees that you have, but also I know that you impact your communities, and Matt is doing a fantastic job. Look up his company, Grateful. See if there's an opportunity for you guys to connect, and if there's something you guys could do to partner together. We most certainly are going to be looking into ourselves here. And the price of this for listening to this podcast is to share it. We know that you have other people that are business owners, CEOs of companies that would benefit from knowing Matt and his company, Grateful. So get this in their hands as well, too. All right. You guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next episode.